hear a story or a pitch, how do you know that there's something here or there's not? Like, what's the thing that's like, there's something we can do with this?
Okay. So yeah, I'll go back to the concept, and there are examples of this, but when you hear a pitch and the concept itself has familiar elements, because TV shows do and have to in order for people to let them in, but if it has a hook or just a left of center, I always say it's the why here, why now, especially because television is so cyclical and it's, there's so much. But how do you tap into something that's happening maybe in the world or with people or a theme or, again, a variation of a theme? That in and of itself, like if I hadn't heard it and it's like, oh, that's really interesting. That's where ears perk up. And then I will say, even if the concept isn't this sort of mesmerizing thing in and of itself, when the writer, who's usually pitching the concept, I always say it's like if it's coming out of their pores, right? It's like it's just because they breathe it, they are living it, they're built to tell that story. It's evident to me, and a lot of times I've bought those projects because I don't know, I may not know exactly what the poster is or how to sell it or what 7 seasons are, but I know that person is gonna do their damnedest to deliver that, and that and again, it becomes special in its point of view.
I'm so glad you asked that question, because as a television consumer my whole life, I never really thought about, I just sat down like different strokes. Just gonna watch it. But like at the time in which you first heard of NCIS, we hadn't.
Yeah.
Like, you were the one to be like, I think people will watch that. But like, obviously people have watched it and watched it forever, but like, I just turned on to NCIS.
Yeah.
That's an amazing skill, I think. So
well, and as an example, just Robert and Michelle King, who created The Good Wife, they had come in, and of course we've heard legal shows up the wazoo, right? So it's like, okay, what's the angle in? What's the take? And they were, sort of sitting back watching the news, and it was, Elliott Spitzer was sort of the poster for when they've been out and about on press tours and talking about what's the inspiration. Elliott was really just one of maybe 10 men at that point that had been caught in a scandal, and they're at a press conference, but they're looking over the shoulder of the man at the woman who's just sitting there like fidgeting with her ring, or she's got her Chanel suit on and is just smiling. It's like, no, wait, what is she thinking? And so that, again, when they come in and they pitch a show about a fish out of water, a woman who went to law school but never practiced law, she's going back to work because she has to, because her, jerk of a husband who's up on a podium and is a career politician has cheated on her. That's the point of view, and that's what makes it special and unique. So
I just find that incredible, because you're the one who decided we'd all get to watch it. Based upon, I think people will watch that. It's just a fascinating.
I'll tell you what, just sorry, one little thing, just because we're on The Good Wife and you just said that. We heard that pitch at 5 o'clock on a Thursday, okay? And I had a colleague, and there were other people in the department, and we were tired, and it was pitch season, and we had heard maybe 7 or 8 pitches that day, and it was late, and I knew that my colleague needed to go because he had something to get to. We heard the pitch, and there's a signal that we would make to each other if we really loved it and wanted to buy it in the room. We would make a signal to each other, and we'd just buy it. But there was no signal that day. Like, I made the signal, but he didn't make the signal, and so I was like, okay, you know what? We're tired. We'll figure this out. We can, He out the door. And so I just figured, the next morning we always regroup, blah, blah, blah. And I drove in early that next morning. It was a Friday morning. And I usually would get in early to read because it's quiet. And I was driving, and a very good friend of mine who happened to be attached to the project called me. And I picked up the phone and I said, hello. And he's like, how could you? I said, how could I what? It's like 6:30 in the morning. Like, what have I done? And he said, you're passing? And I said, no, we're not passing. What are you talking about? Like, no. And he goes, I just got a call. I got an email from my agent that you're passing. And I said, we're definitely not passing. And then it's starting to occur to me, oh my God, my colleague passed. And I'm not kidding, it's 6:30 in the morning. And so I said, I'll call you back. And I'm pissed. I mean, I am like, but I'm.
This is the question I want to ask you.
I know.
If you were a male, would he have done that?
No, and it's going to get to the root of your sort of like the composure inside of a system that. And I did. I drove in and I sat at my desk, and it was an hour and a half before anybody started to show up, and I was waiting, and we shared a wall. And I was waiting and waiting and waiting, and I heard him barrel in. Good morning, everybody. Blah blah blah. And by the way, he is a very good friend of mine. By the way, and I will not say his name, but he is a very good person. No, he's a very good person, and he's a good guy. But he's good morning, everybody. Blah blah. And I'm like, whoosh, the fire coming out of my ears. And I gave him a minute. You know, he got his coffee. Blah blah blah. And I went and I said, how dare you? And he said, what? And I said, you passed, did you? And he said, yeah, on that stupid pitch? Yeah, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, here's how it's gonna go, okay? We're doing it, okay? And you're gonna like it, okay? And that was a mistake, and this is how you cover it, and blah, 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 blah. And we did. And he came to love the project, okay? But it was just, there was a moment that he just, I don't know, he was thinking about where he needed to be, you know? And he didn't get it right away. It was also like, it's a female point of view, you know? Like there's a lot of reasons we can point to. But I would have bought the project anyway, but you sure as hell better know, like, that thing was gonna be good. And then cut to, you know.
So here's my question, though. Like, when that kind of thing happens, like your instinct is like, we're gonna buy this show, and some person, in this case, this particular guy says no. Years later, when you win Emmys and the show's big, do you ever like walk by their office, like drop the Emmy, like, oh, sorry, let me pick up the Emmys. just you almost missed it. Do you ever do that?
No.
I would be all about, I would get Emmy tattooed on my face.
That's funny. No, and again, he was part of the team that made the show go. Do you know?
Yeah.
So it was just that it was that moment, that moment of the pitch. It could have gone very differently.
You're a better person than me. I'd be mad
It's
at Emmys.
all good.
Alyssa.